Hey guys, my name is Mannequin and welcome back to Mastering EDM with FL Studio. So today we are talking about peak compression for mastering. So as you probably noticed looking down here into our channel strip, the EQs have been moved to the top. The limiter number 6 is still at the bottom. We have span that is last, and now in the middle we have a fruity compressor. So this is kind of the general layout you want to have. Sometimes people say that you do your peak compression before your EQing, but that's, you know, just up to how you want to do it. Keep in mind though that if you have a very flabby low end that you kind of shape with the EQ, your compressor is going to behave a lot differently if you put it before the EQ than if you put it after the EQ. So keep that in mind. Order does matter. It is a very crucial thing here. Do not put your compressor after your limiter. That is probably not a good idea. So anyway, I already have a compressor here, and I actually already have settings dialed in. I don't usually do this, and today's video is going to be a little bit quick because like basically walking you through how to set these settings is kind of pointless for one main reason. Peak compression for mastering, you can either do it or you can't do it, and I say that in a very broad sense. Basically, if you are very good at compression in other stuff, like let's say you know how to compress drums to get a good sound, you know how to compress synths to get a good sound, you know how to use compression in general, then this video is for you. If you are kind of new to compression still and you're still trying to hear what a compressor is doing, still trying to decide what settings are right when you're compressing stuff, and you're kind of just lost in compression, then you could just turn off this video until you get a little bit better. And I mean that very seriously, because if you do peak compression on your mix and you're new to compression, you're gonna either over compress it or you're gonna under compress it, but you won't know if you're doing the right settings for under compression or the right compression because you can't hear it and your ears can't pick that out. So so that's the main problem with peak compression on a mastering bus. So so as I said, if you are comfortable with compression, you could continue on in this video. Otherwise, just drop out, because as I said, I already set this up. Part of the reason being because I don't want you to just follow and listen for what I'm doing, because you might follow it and the placebo might kick in. You think you're doing something, but you really can't hear it because you're not used to listening for compression. So so that's why I'm not walking you through the settings in terms of like listening to it change and setting it there. That's why I just have this set up beforehand. I'm going to talk about that though. So for those of you that have decided to stick around because you are pretty good with compression and you know what you're doing when you pop it onto something, the key to this is be very subtle. So we're going to take a listen here to just the beginning of the track, and it's off initially, and then we're going to turn it on and take a listen to the kick drum, and then we're going to check this area as well, and you're going to see it's a lot more prominent in this section. But try to listen for the kick drum mostly, maybe some of the hi-hats and stuff like that, but it'll behave slightly differently with that. So we'll take a listen here. So once again, if you're good with compression, you probably can hear the difference that's making. I'm going to go over here because it's a little bit more obvious in this area. Once again, we'll start with it off. And there we go. So you probably notice what it does is it makes the kick sound tighter, rounder, and also a little bit more in the background. It's not quite as upfront. So one thing I'll probably do is I'll probably just pull up the threshold a tiny bit, just kind of, make it so it doesn't sound quite as pushed back. But essentially what we have here is we have a reasonable ratio that's not too high. You don't want this anything over 7 typically, because then you're just pushing it past to the areas where you're doing like a lot of compression. So so this is at 5.5. You'd probably be better suited sticking it closer to 3 though, because then it's a little bit more subtle and not quite as obvious. I have set this up so it's a little bit more obvious, just so you kind of catch what's going on in this compression here. And then the next thing we have is the attack is 78 right now. That's because for this particular track, that's about a good setting. If we open it up more, we end up getting things kind of sound like they're pulsating a bit. And if we make it less than this, we start to get like very quick peaks pass through, but we don't get like the emphasis we need. So basically, you see that peak right there, we'll get that through and we'll get a little bit of this through, but we won't get like this first section through to kind of emphasize this bump right here. So, so that's, you know, that's kind of what I set it for this track. But generally speaking, if you're going over 100 milliseconds, you're kind of, you know, you have too long of an attack there. That's something a little bit more suited for individual tracks, not so much mastering. And the release on this is insanely fast. Now, you could say, just put it to 11 instead of 1 because 1 introduces like issues with the distortion. Yes, that is true. You can do that. I have set this to 1 though, just because I like the tone that it gives. And what this basically does is it allows the waveform, as we're kind of watching this, it allows us to attack reasonably slowly to kind of emphasize that peak. But when we're kind of like out of that area, it allows us to return back to our normal settings so we could attack for the next peak. If you leave this at any high value, so you have like a longer release, like anything that's over, once again, 100 milliseconds, then your release is going to be actually 100 milliseconds. It's way too long for your release. It's going to basically start running over all your various peaks and you're going to start bleeding the compression and it's not going to be tight anymore. It's just going to kind of hang out throughout the rest of your peaks as it's running across. So your release needs to be very fast. Your attack needs to be reasonably fast, just enough to let the peaks through, not so long that it kind of like starts to pulsate and kind of hang out, and not too tight that you're only getting the very fast clicks in the various portions of the track. So that's generally what we're looking for here. And I have set this to the vintage type. And the reason is because I like this tone. It kind of works well for what I'm doing. Switch through them, take a listen to each of them, see how they behave, and just decide which one you like. So the one sad thing about this is we cannot see how much this compressor is compressing. There's no metering to show us that, which is a little bit sad. But at the same time, you could say, oh, well, then just use Maximus. I'm not going to lie, Maximus is a good mastering plugin. But once again, as I said, we're avoiding this for now because we're kind of focusing on mastering for our own purposes. If you want more in-depth mastering, you're going to have to learn how to do multiband compression and limiting, and that's going to be quite a bit more involved. So we could just use the compressor on this master section here, which covers, instead of multiband, it's the entire spectrum. And we would actually be able to see the gain reduction. But I actually found the tone that I get out of this for this particular portion of mastering is not really what I'm looking for. It's quite transparent, but it doesn't quite give me that that roundness and that tightness that I'm looking for. So now another thing that this could be described as I keep on talking about this as it's like to tighten things up a little bit, is you could also hear it kind of glues the track together a bit. Now, if you've ever heard of Cytomic the Glue, that's where this plugin is kind of going to be having some fun. So Cytomic the Glue is a very, very popular compressor that is used on mastering buses, and it just kind of melds everything together and keeps dynamics relatively good. So, so that one's a lot more popular for this particular purpose, but I am using the Fruity compressor because I actually like the tone of this one. So, so that's, generally speaking, everything you need to know about the compression here. Once again, it's very subtle, and if you could really hear the compressor pumping in this particular area, then you are doing it absolutely wrong. So this is the one thing that I would strongly suggest skipping if you're new to compression. Once again, just because this is something that could easily mess up your track. Limiting, it's easy to do it wrong if you just push stuff too hard, and you start to get like clipping and such. But this one, with the the peak compression, it's very easy to just altogether kill the dynamics of your track because you're doing the wrong kind of compression. So very subtle. And only use it if you're certain you know how to use a compressor. That's generally my suggestion for this. That's pretty much all I have for this particular video, and that'll pretty much wrap up our series on mastering. I was going to do a video on metering, but there's kind of a limited number of plugins available, and their use case is also limited as well. And I'm not quite certain what we're going to move into next, but we'll have some fun in the series, continuing learning some stuff in FL Studio. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.